before I met Bruce, I had some writers write a script, and the script became Kung Fu. I wanted to make that as a movie. But Warner Brothers turned me down, at which time I gave it to Tom Kuhn, who you'll be talking to. He'll tell you what happened after that. But Bruce was going to be in that, and Tom would tell you what happened when they tried to put him on it. When he didn't get it, he came to me and he was distraught. And I said, look, I need some film on you. And he said he had this offer from Raymond Chow to do a movie for $10,000. And it's called The Big Boss. And I said, look, make the movie, send me the film, and I'm sure I can work out something so that you'll be able to do a film for Warner Brothers. And he did that. And he went to Hong Kong. And as soon as The Big Boss was finished, he sent it to me. At which point, I showed it to Ted Ashley one night in the screening. And just he and I alone were sitting there, and he was the head of the CEO, the head of Warner Brothers, and he was amazed also at how Bruce was in the fights. And he said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "Let me do a script, and let me try to put it together, and then let's see." He said, "Well, it can't be a lot of money." I said, "Let me get a script first." At which point, I went to Dick Ma, who represented Warner Brothers' the sales department in the Far East. By this time, this was only a couple of months after Big Boss had opened, Bruce was a phenomenon already, and he had the smell of it. And it was Dick Ma who shepherded me through the idea of what kind of a script we had to make. And I talked about it a lot with him, trying to figure a way to make something in which we didn't have guns. And Paul Heller was my partner at that time. I brought him in on it. And then we brought Michael Allen to write it. And then after we got the script, I still didn't have a deal. And so Warner's wouldn't put much money up at all. And so I said, well, suppose I can get Hong Kong to put some money up. And they said, let's see what you can do. So I went to Hong Kong and met with Bruce. And Bruce was dying at this point to do an international film. I mean, he was generous, wonderful, terrific. He wanted to show Steve McQueen and Garner and Coburn and everybody else who he taught that he was a star. But nobody knew about him except in Hong Kong. And I said, fine. And we looked at the script, and I went to his guy who had his contract, which is Raymond Chow, and we negotiated a deal, at which point Raymond Chow didn't want it. Bruce then had made 2 films already, or maybe 3, and Raymond Chow was completely against the idea of losing his star. And so I negotiated with Raymond over and over, but in this inscrutable way, we never were able to make a deal. And so it looked like it was all finished, at which point, the night before I left, Bruce and I and Raymond and everybody went out for dinner. And at dinner time, I said, Bruce, it's a shame you're never going to become an international star because Raymond will not make a deal. And Raymond looked at me and he went blank. And he said, all right, I'll make the deal. And that's how they became partners with Warner Brothers and myself and Paul Heller in Into the Dragon. I had an enormous problem when I got there. We started to shoot. Bruce did not show up. Warner's kept saying, how are the rushes? We were shooting everything but Bruce. 2 weeks went by. I still hadn't gotten Bruce on the set. He was having fights with Raymond Chow. He was very scared. It was his first international. I'm wiring these things back. Oh, Bruce is terrific. And I have no film on him. And they're saying, where's the stuff? I mean, we should be seeing rushes with Bruce. The stuff looks good, but where's Bruce? Finally, he showed up 2 weeks late. And he was really wired. And Klaus came to me and he said, Fred, look, he's got a titch. He had a tick. You can see it. I said, relax. Keep shooting him until he stops. And after 26 takes, the tick went away and Bruce got it. It was the simplest scene with the girl in the room. And from then on, he just went ahead. Now, what that showed is that Bruce was really wired, excited, and looked at anything or any excuse to get things. At one time, he just got angry with Michael Allen, and for I don't know what the reason was, I want him off the island. At which point he found him walking around in Hong Kong. That was another problem. And it was a treat to give Michael Allen to go there, and he finally told him, get out, right? Even though he didn't change the script much. I just think it was overblown by that time, just like the Bob Wall fight was overblown. Everything was overblown on this film. There wasn't anything that I didn't wake up in the morning knowing there would be some disaster that day. The Americans had never worked with a Hong Kong crew before, and we were the Guilos, the devils. And it was very difficult, and you had to learn how to deal. I mean, I couldn't be tough with any of the crew. They would lose face and walk off and didn't show up again. And in the making of the picture had 50 different problems that are unbelievable. And there was originally a scene on a motorcycle which starts the film off, but they couldn't make a rubber-tired, smooth attachment to the motorcycle made out of wood, and Bruce was clomping all over the place. We couldn't film it. I mean, that's just one thing, but there were many, many problems in making the film. Bruce was fine with the cast and crew. He was a little tough on the Chinese crew, but that's the way they were. I mean, and of course, he had to be there every day. That's not the way the Chinese films were made. Remember, the Chinese films were made, I forgot the name of the director, Lo Wayne, who did Big Boss, but he'd be at the track half the day. And when he showed up, they shot a couple of scenes, then he'd come back. It wasn't like shooting an American film. We had deadlines, we had times, we didn't overshoot sometimes. It was a very different way of shooting than the Chinese way. And the Chinese crew couldn't believe that we were moving so fast all the time. You didn't have in those days breakaway glass, unfortunately, and Bruce kicked him, and the glass broke, and Bruce got nicked, and he blamed Bob Wall on it, and then it became, people thought there was a animosity between the two, and I didn't really see it that much, but the people built on it, People were always challenging Bruce. And I always had the problem with Bruce to say, Bruce, it's a film. We can't do this, Bruce would never really talk to me straight on. He would always get a stool and then sit on the stool because I was 6'2". And he would stand on the stool and then talk to me. And so it's kind of fun. He also knew I hated snakes. So in the morning he'd always greet me with a cobra. Hi, Fred, and he'd throw it at me, It was his way of being fun. Remember, he did all the fights with Bob Klaus. And, Bob Klaus doesn't get enough credit, but he was a wonderful director. He was calm, and he worked with Bruce, and Bruce would set the fights up almost impossible to do, and Bob would adjust them simply and make them work. I was there every day, and I could see what was happening, and we did take advantage of a lot of the fights by having enough cameras and by shooting enough film, and then sometimes even shooting it fast, So it was very interesting, but Bruce was so good, and what he had, I thought, was international, but no one else thought that. Because of Bruce, and because of, not because of the story, not because of the producers, even though we were instrumental in getting it going. I think it's because Bruce was a phenomenon. I mean, he just, streaked across the world. He's the first third world star that ever hit the movies. Everywhere I go, I mean, it's just, people always talk about Enter the Dragon. Even though he did other films, something about Enter the Dragon captured the imagination and the spirit of Bruce. And I think it was just like the great last hurrah, Even though he did some things after, it was never what he got here. The energy was so complete, and he was so scared. Remember, he was frightened. and he really wanted everything to be perfect, and he was a perfectionist, you know. And I think we catered to that. You know, he didn't want to do the scene with the mirrors, for instance, but after we explained it and everything else, it changed. John Cowley, who was the executive production guy, while we were just about to start, sent another script to Bruce, which I was furious about. Because here we're just about to start the film and another script comes. Bruce thinks he's going to get another script, another thing. And I really blew my stack, and I told Teddy, you can't do that. You know, of course, they backed down then after that. But during the filming of it, he never really got any other scripts besides that one that I remember coming in. But there would talk about a future, you know, and they'd like to keep him as a star. Because Teddy had lent him money before he went to Hong Kong. And he was sort of obligated, I think, in a funny kind of way. Teddy never thought he was going to be this great big star, but Teddy had a great knack for picking people. I think the fondest memories I had when I first met him, he was very smart and charming and wonderfully interested in everything. I love the fact that he knew lots of stuff. We were able to talk about so many things. And it was his great energy about life. That's what made Bruce interesting. He just wasn't a martial arts he knew everything about. He was interested in everything, you know. It goes back to his dancing and the movies. But Bruce was a very interesting man when he slowed down and you just met him on a one-to-one and he wasn't posturing, you know. But I think that was my most fun with Bruce. Once he got into this and I got this film going, he was tough. And part of it was his own perfection and his frightening situation that he found himself in which he had to do well. An example is he sent Steve McQueen a picture of himself, right? And Steve sent him back an autographed picture of himself. I mean, it was like he wanted a little note or something. And Steve liked him because I dealt with Steve. You know, I did a picture afterwards with Steve, who really cared about Bruce. And but Bruce didn't get that, you know. He was in his own world in a way. He was very bright. He knew a lot of things about all kinds of fighting. I remember a lunch we had with the Senator Tunney, in which he was able to describe all the fights that Senator Tunney's father had had. And it was amazing how much he knew about it. Bruce was very, at that point in his life, very nice and sweet and condescending, and you know, he was dealing with a lot of actors and stars, and he was very much caught up with the Hollywood situation. He wanted to direct, he wanted to, you know, all those kind of things when actors want to direct. You know, think of famous artists, all those pictures they made. You know, it's tough. I think that Bruce wanted to do it all, thought he could do it all. If he had matured and grown up with the business a little, he could still be directing, working, teaching. He did a lot of things, and the question was how to focus all that energy. In Enter the Dragon, I think for the first real time, it was all focused on Enter the Dragon, which is what made it so interesting. From then on, he was focused in lots of different ways, you know. He was writing things, and he was problems with his marriage and with this and with that, you know, all those kind of things that took away from the focus of Enter the Dragon. He was just a lightning spark, you know. He came out of nowhere, and he was, you know, there are a few men like that, and it just happened. And the sad part is he passed away, because I would have loved to see what were the next films or what he would have done. I think he would have achieved more greatness, but it would have taken time, and he would have gone different directions before he found it. But he had it in him. But we were just fortunate to have someone to preserve on film who had this unbelievable energy and mind And he had this great simpatico also that you don't get, but that I knew him at the beginning, which was so warm.